What's going on, guys? I wanted to hop on here today and talk about the time I got concussed training for a kickboxing fight and having to drop out of that fight because of the damage that I took in training. I thought I would just talk a little bit about what that was like for me and some of the dumb things that I've seen in fight gyms over the years. And this happened quite recently. I'm still a little bit concussed. I'm like maybe 9 days out. But I'm feeling pretty good, making some videos. So everything starts out pretty normal. I'd be in the fight gym a couple days a week, training, sparring, and then on my own, I call it sort of doing my homework, doing more, trainings without the other guys in the gym, stuff like footwork, shadow boxing, hitting the bag, doing what I can on my own, right? Now, I don't want to omit too many details, but where I live, the jiu-jitsu scene is really big. I think it's the North American Grappling Association, or NAGA. There are those tournaments at universities pretty consistently here where I live. But as far as striking goes, there's really not a big scene. If you want to drive maybe an hour out, there's decent boxing, but there's really not a lot of kickboxing. So for reference, where I train, the fight gym where I train, they have top of the line jiu-jitsu instructors. All of these guys are black belts that have been training and competing for many years, and their classes are done very well. I have trained jiu-jitsu for a hot minute. But anyways, finding a good Muay Thai teacher or a good Muay Thai coach, I guess, is just a lot tougher in the area that I live. So at the fight gym that I was training up with at this point, there are 2 Muay Thai coaches that would teach classes throughout the week. And as I said, jiu-jitsu is much more popular at this area I'm living in. And there's many more jiu-jitsu classes offered in comparison to how many, striking, like boxing, kickboxing classes they have. So you get the idea, right? Now, this gym that I'm going to has 2 different Muay Thai instructors. So one of them, for the sake of the video, we'll call him John, right? Now, John's a pretty chill dude, and he knows his shit. He's had 45 professional fights, some of which were pretty high-level competition. He's a smaller guy. I think he fought at like 125, maybe 135 when he was around my age. And for a guy that's got 45 fights, he looks pretty good. And he's very intelligent in how he presents himself. He's got good style. He can keep up with the golden boys in the gym, the guys, some of our best fighters that are maybe half his age. But when I would have classes with him, he's more technique-based, more cardio-based, and we usually don't spar very much, practice fighting. We don't spar very much in class when he's teaching. Now, I would usually go to classes during the day, which were taught by the second Muay Thai teacher. And we can just say, for the sake of the story, his name is Carl, right? Now, I didn't know this until after I got injured and I went home and I started looking into everybody, just to see like how well he knew his stuff. And when I went to the fight gym, my website where I go to like pay for my monthly classes and stuff, I went to fighters' profiles, right? And I start scrolling through, and I'm reading through all these jiu-jitsu guys with huge bios. I'm reading through John's bio, all his kickboxing accomplishments. I scroll down and I get to Carl's, and his bio is really short, and it doesn't say that much. So I go on Tapology, and I go to look for his record. For those of you guys that aren't very experienced with, combat sports or the fight game, Tapology is a website that you can go to look up fighter profiles, amateur and professionals. But if somebody's a professional fighter, you're probably going to find their record on there, right? And I go on his Tapology and I see that he has a record of 0-3, 0 wins and 3 losses. Now, I'm not trying to dog on the guy, because compared to most people, he's probably still very good at fighting, but I don't think I want to be coached by a guy that's 0-3. I noticed that Carl's classes were not as well planned out And there would be a lot of times where he would have a brain fart, and instead of coming up with a new training activity for us to do, like hitting the mitts or doing footwork drills or running, he would just have a spar. He would just have us start fighting. For reference, Carl, the 0 to 3 gentleman, is a really big guy. He probably walks around between 220 to 240 pounds, whereas John fought at, as I said, I think like 125, maybe 135, just a much smaller guy. Now, I hadn't competed since college. I learned how to box in high school, and then I got really into boxing in college, training a lot with the university club. And then I got into jiu-jitsu while I was in college. And then after I graduated, kept training jiu-jitsu. And then a bit ago, I got back into the whole striking scene with boxing and learning kickboxing at this fight gym that I've been going to for maybe about a year now, you know? But anyways, getting back on topic, Tuesday morning, I wake up and I go to class to go train. And obviously it was Carl teaching us, the big guy that's 0-3. And we start the training off pretty well. Everybody else in the gym is pretty experienced as well. A lot of amateur guys that know their stuff, maybe a few pros in there. We warm up jumping rope as a lot of kickboxers do. We run around a little bit, and then we split up and we get into partner drills. So we would do Dutch style drills where you pick a certain amount of punches or certain style of punches or kicks, and you go back and forth on each other. So one guy's throwing, one guy's, trying to defend. After that, we would hit the mitts for a little bit and do some head movement drills with slipping and weaving. We did some footwork drills on the floor ladder. And maybe 40 minutes into class, Carl splits us up for sparring. We get our shin guards on, we put our mouth guards in. Nobody's wearing headgear. And I remember at the time, well, not at the time, just because this was barely 2 weeks ago, but Carl had come up to me explaining that there was a regional tournament. There's a very small competition pool of kickboxers in the area that I live. Because as I said, most of it's these jiu-jitsu guys. So Carl comes up to me and some of the other more experienced fighters in the gym, and he pulls us aside and he explains that there's this regional competition coming up, and that if we wanted to do it, we should start showing up to the gym more and doing more sparring rounds. Now, for anyone that's not aware, amateur level fights are usually only between 3 and 5 rounds. And unless it's a specific kind of championship fight, most of the time amateur fights are 3 rounds. So for anyone that's not super experienced with the fight game, that's usually how it is. And then the pros do significantly more rounds. I believe in kickboxing, it goes to about like 5 or 8 or something like that. But I know with boxing, the amateurs, it's 3 rounds. And then the pros do 12. So all of us in there would be training for this regional 3-round fight. Now at this point, I was in pretty good shape, and I'd been training pretty hard, pretty consistently, stacking days at the gym, days at home, and getting in a lot of extra shit. Hitting the bag, shadow boxing, cardio, footwork. I was pretty on the money at this point. So I told Coach that I would up my rounds a little bit and let him take the lead, and we could have some more intense training leading up to this tournament, which is in 2 weeks from now, or about a month from when this happened, when I was talking with Coach. So we split up and we get to sparring. There are about maybe 5 or 6 other guys, and we all sparred with each other maybe twice for 2-minute rounds. Some of the rounds were really easy. Some of the rounds were with new guys where we don't strike back, we just work on defense. And then some of the rounds were pretty hard because the other guys that were training for the competition would hit me a little bit harder than some of the other dudes that were in the class. But all in all, I did pretty well. And the last round I had with one of my friends at the gym, we decided that we wanted to box. At this point, we were practicing our kickboxing, but I landed a kick wrong and fucked up my toe a little bit. So he decided that we would box for the last 2 rounds. And we picked up the pace. We were throwing some pretty hard shots, some pretty hard sparring. We even had to tone it down. We both agreed to, finish our last round a little bit lighter just because we were tuning it up, having a bit of a gym war, if you could call it. But anyways, guys, we finish up with the sparring, had some easy rounds, had some hard rounds. And I was all hyped up. I felt fine. I didn't get rocked. I didn't get knocked out or take any really hard shots or anything like that. Took maybe a couple stiff jabs and, tuned it up for one half of the round at the end, but everything was great. I felt fine. This was on Tuesday. So I finish the class, I go home, I take a shower, and I noticed throughout the day that I would get these dull little aches in my head. Slight feeling of pressure that would come and go, and a very slight headache. But when I woke up the next day, I felt pretty much fine. Maybe I was a little more lethargic than usual, and maybe I felt a little bit of pressure in the morning when I first woke up, but everything felt fine. I didn't notice that I'd overloaded my body or taken any more damage than I was supposed to, right? But anyways, guys, I rest up on Wednesday, pretty chill day. I was maybe a little more burned out than usual, but I felt fine. And typically I would listen to my body, but I decided I wanted to push a little harder getting ready for the competition. So Thursday morning, I go back to the fight gym and we're turning it up. Again, there's a pretty good mix of people. Some guys in there are competing like me. Some of them are newer. Some of them are more experienced. Some of them are bigger than me. Some of them are smaller than me. Going into training, I felt fine. I didn't have any active symptoms or anything like that, but it was definitely a tough spar. I had some rounds where I did very well and I didn't really get hit clean very many times. And then I had some rounds where I ate a few shots clean, maybe a few shots that were bigger than I would prefer to take, but I never got rocked, I never got wobbled, I never got knocked down or anything like that. So I didn't stop sparring. I sparred the whole day through, and our coach was pushing us pretty hard. He was saying, don't take a break unless you really feel like you need it. Try and treat this like a fight, try and do all these rounds. And I remember towards the end of the day when we were sparring, I knew that my body was getting tired, but I didn't want to give up on myself because I thought if I pulled out of the sparring before anybody else did, I would lose confidence in myself, or maybe coach would lose confidence in me. So I stuck it out, and towards the end of the day, I noticed that as my body got really tired, I took a few jabs that I probably could have slipped or blocked had I have not been so exhausted. Any of you guys that are new to training combat sports, it's okay to not train at 100%. It's a dangerous sport. We get injured, shit happens. But if you're really exhausted, and if you're, especially if you're not competing, if you're getting really exhausted, it's time to call it a day. Because when you spar really tired, you get hit way more. But yeah, guys, I would say throughout these 3 days, Tuesdays to Thursday, I probably sparred a total of 20 rounds, and I would say about maybe 15 of those rounds were really feeling like a fight for me. Not even a quarter of those rounds were really hard rounds. It was just the volume, man. It was just way too much on my body. But I remember after I finished up training that day, at first I felt pretty okay, but when I got home, I noticed a decent headache. It wasn't anything scary, but I definitely had come and go headaches and a feeling of pressure in my head that was quite prominent. I also felt like my heart rate was a little higher and my heart rhythm was a little bit off, but my vestibular system felt pretty okay. My balance was only a little bit off, and it just felt like when I were to look at something farther away, it just took an extra few milliseconds for both of my eyes to coordinate and look at something. But anyways, guys, Thursday, after some hard training, I go home. I thought this was totally normal, prepping up for a fight that I had coming up. But I noticed some pretty heavy symptoms, guys. I mean, not very intense concussion symptoms, but I was getting concussion symptoms, which is scary. Even if it's very minor, you guys should always go get checked out at the doctor. Always go get checked out by a professional. But anyways, 2 days later, I'm out visiting some family, and I go to a yoga class. At this point, everything felt pretty minor. On my drive down to visit them, I did experience some more headaches and feeling of pressure in my head, but that's normal when you spar hard, and sometimes it only lasts for maybe a day or two, and then I feel completely fine, right? Like what happened on Tuesday going into Wednesday, and then I felt totally fine. But I think it was pretty clear that I had a subconcussive overload. I took too many light shots in a short period of time, and after I finished up with a yoga class on Saturday morning, I felt great. I stood up, I put my mat away, and all of the sudden, I got this really bad head rush, and I had to sit down, this really intense head rush, and I felt this pressure going on my head. The pressure wasn't too bad, and the headache wasn't too bad, but it definitely was there, and lights got really bright for a couple hours. And at that moment, I realized that I was concussed. And then in my mind, it clicked that I showed up to these classes and I was training way more than I usually would. And I was sparring way more than I usually would. It clicked in my head that I'd sparred like 20 rounds and I did way too much. I ended up going home after visiting my family and getting checked out at the doctor's maybe just a few days after this happened. I got checked out with the lead nurse practitioner and one of her nurses that works underneath her at the doctor's office. I explained to her my symptoms and we went over some vestibular tests. You know, she did a few tests on my balance and my coordination. We talked about my symptoms for a little bit, and then she diagnosed me. She was like, yeah, you know, you had subconcussive overload that's resulted in a concussion. She told me to take it easy for a few weeks, but then I should be able to go back to training just fine, and that most of the symptoms that I have will just go back to normal. All of the symptoms that I have will heal and go back to normal. Obviously, it's not good for you, but she said that it was a very mild head injury, and for someone that fights, this really isn't something to worry about. I just need to take time off and let my body heal. And this was about, I'm recording this maybe 9-10 days ago, and I feel way better. I'm just going to give myself more time than I think I need to really let my brain rest. Probably not going to spar for a while, guys. But yeah, after that, I kind of had this eye-opening experience where I realized that, you know, if I was a little bit younger, boxing in college, I'd probably just give it 2 weeks, get back in there, and then have the fight. But the more I think about it, the more I really want to be careful with my brain health. I decided that I wasn't going to continue and go for the competition because that wouldn't be enough time for my brain to heal. My coach wasn't too disappointed in me, but he wasn't happy. And at that point, I realized how important it is to listen to my own body and not just trust my coaches and trust people based off of blind experience. I have to go off of what feels right for me. But yeah, guys, I'm about 9-10 days out recording this. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm going to take it easy for probably another week. And then after 2 weeks, once I'm not symptomatic for a good 2-3 days, that's when I'll do some more cardio, shadow box a little bit, maybe start hitting the bag. And after a month, I'll get back into sparring, do a few easy rounds, and I'll get my confidence back. You know, it's not a big deal. After I got concussed and I told my coach that I was dropping out of the fight, he was disappointed in me, and it did make me feel a little bit less confident in myself, knowing that I was dropping out of the fight. But I also realized that I was doing the smart thing, and sometimes it's better to take time off and recover and then come back and keep training. That's one of the biggest things that's going to lead to taking real damage in combat sports, or, you know, people call it when your chin cracks and you can't take punches as well. A lot of these guys will get hurt and they won't take time off before they go back into the gym. But yeah, guys, if you ever get knocked down, don't lose your confidence. You can always come back and keep training. But if any of you guys are new to the fight game, just listen to some of those tips that I have for y'all. You know, don't spar when you're dehydrated or if you were drinking the night before. Listen to your body, not your coaches. And if you think something is off with your head, like you took too many hard shots or you're concussed, always go to the doctor. Always get checked out, even if it's just like a local clinic, to have a professional take a look at you. But yeah, guys, you only have one brain, so if you are someone that trains and fights, don't spar stupid. If you do have any crazy sparring stories, please drop them in the comments below. I know this was kind of a longer, more chill vid, but I did want to talk about it because I know there are probably a lot of other people out there, young people that are playing sports, getting hurt, and trying to return to them right away. So maybe by sharing this video, I can spread some awareness. And remember, guys, if you do take a ding to the head and get checked out, let your body rest for longer than you think you do, because it takes a long time for the brain to heal itself up. Anyways, y'all, I hope this was a cool little story for you guys to make you more aware. I'm a little bit sad about dropping out of the fight, but I know that it's for the best. And the older I get, the easier it is to put some of that pride aside. Still not there. I'm in my early 20s, but we're getting there. Anyways, y'all, let me know what kind of stories you guys want to hear. If you guys want to hear some crazy fight stories or sparring, or if you just want me to keep it to the funny stuff, let me know.